Soon, terrible noises echo from inside the armory, accompanied by Tiny's voice apologizing and promising to be more careful in the future. After some time, Tiny emerges in poor condition, clearly beaten. The guards speculate whether Commander Cran is responsible and remark that being too talented at such a young age is not always a blessing. They suspect the rumors are true that Tiny has fallen out of favor with the commander, perhaps even daring to aspire to his position. They pity him, saying Cran went too far, and decide to leave him alone for the day. Meanwhile, two maids see Tiny's battered state as he drags a weapon along the floor. They ask what happened. Tiny explains that the commander had told him to follow, claiming he had battle equipment for him. Then this happened. The maids urge him to rest and offer to assist if he needs anything. Later, a servant pours a drink for the Lord, who inquires about the sacrifices. The servant replies they have been secured. The Lord asks if they are all corpses from Wolfmina once again, thinking that Tiny has completely ruined the invader. He dismisses the servant and reflects privately. He admits he does not know exactly what Tiny is planning, but deems it unimportant. He intends to make use of Tiny, planning to employ his blood in a ritual once his bloodline is confirmed in the coming days. However, the Lord knows that if Tiny is not from the correct family, he himself will face a terrible penalty for failing to supervise Wolf. Still, he is confident this will not happen. Given Tiny's demeanor and knowledge of history, the boy must be from a prestigious family. In his mind, it is impossible for someone so young to defeat a knight unless they have awakened through that family's secret growth technique. The most telling sign is Tiny's black hair and eyes, more than enough proof for him. Satisfied, the Lord retires to his bed, eager to meet this family. As he closes his eyes, a strange voice interrupts him. Irritated, he wonders if a servant has triggered his warning magic and thinks about sacrificing them for disturbing him. But then his magic warns of genuine danger. He senses a presence. Suddenly, Tiny materializes from nowhere and drives a sword into the Lord's chest. The Lord screams in agony, shocked that Tiny could reach him. Black magic surges out of his body as Tiny declares this is divine punishment. Moments later, the Lord dies in miserable pain. The next morning, when the maid enters the room, she is horrified to discover the Lord's lifeless body. In shock, she informs the other servants that the Lord was a dark mage, a revelation that leaves them equally stunned. Before long, several knights arrive, surrounding the body. One of them states that a priest had already confirmed this before leaving, having sensed dark energy, and was on the way to report it to the parish. Sir Gran of the Knights of Files remarks that the royal investigation team will likely be dispatched soon. A guard then questions the state of the corpse, noting that it appears as though the Lord has been dead for several weeks. Sir Gran explains that the body of a dark mage decays rapidly upon death, and the same fate befell the Lord. The sight is appalling, and everyone is shaken. Sir Gran wonders aloud why the Lord would choose the path of a dark mage, abandoning his nobility and honor for a life that, if discovered, would have brought swift execution. Yet, he concedes, there is no point in questioning the dead, and they still have another matter to address. His gaze falls on the sword embedded in the Lord's body, and he immediately recognizes it as belonging to the commander. This raises the question of whether the commander was the one who killed the Lord. At that moment, a guard informs Sir Gran about Tiny, mentioning that the boy's talent had once earned him a private audience with the Lord. They speculate whether this was around the time rumors began spreading that Tiny would become the next commander, and whether the current commander had reacted in anger upon hearing the news. Sir Gran, surprised, questions if the commander would truly go to such extremes over something like that, concluding that if so, he must have lost his sanity. The knights gather around the body, wondering where the commander has gone, as no one has seen him since the previous day. Sir Gran insists they cannot leave the matter unresolved and resolves to investigate thoroughly. He questions all the servants and guards in the castle, and every maid gives the same account they witnessed the commander beating Tiny. Sir Gran orders the servants to bring the boy before him. When Tiny arrives, he explains that he followed the commander because the Lord had instructed him to deliver some battle equipment. However, he says he was caught off guard when the commander suddenly began to assault him, and as a result, he never managed to deliver the new weapon. Sir Gran slams the door in frustration, noting that the warehouse has already been searched. There were signs the commander had been there, but it is certain he has since left. No one in the castle has seen him since. He vanished without a trace after their encounter. Sir Gran asks Tiny to confirm whether he has truly not seen the commander again, and if there was anything unusual about the meeting. Tiny replies that the commander had reacted strongly against the Lord's decision to appoint him as commander, but beyond that, he had not seen him since. Sir Gran considers that Tiny's account aligns with what another attendant has reported. Tiny then asks what will become of him, as the Lord had promised to secure his future. After a pause, Sir Gran tells him to return the following morning and dismisses him. Outside, Tiny reflects that Sir Gran must be one of the corrupt knights if he has served there for so long, though he does not recall meeting him before. Still, he clearly remembers the time Sir Gran beat them mercilessly. It strikes him as strange that Sir Gran wishes to see him again after he has already given his testimony. Cautious, he decides not to let his guard down. The next morning, when Tiny returns, Sir Gran offers him a mercenary card along with some money. He explains that as a commoner, Tiny will need to either become a knight or a merchant in order to travel freely between territories. So, he vouched for him. Tiny reflects that he had been considering getting a mercenary card anyway, and asks Sir Gran why he is giving it to him. Sir Gran replies that his talents would only go to waste in a place like this, and that he is clearly destined for greater things. Smiling, he adds that this is simply advice from someone with more life experience. Tiny considers Sir Gran's words, feeling that it is something the man might have wanted to tell himself in the past. Perhaps Sir Gran doesn't remember him because he was never around for long. Tiny thanks him and mentions that he was already thinking of leaving soon. Now that a black mage has been discovered, he expects the imperial family will begin looking into it. He holds Valen's ring in his hand, wondering if he might have prevented the person the Lord was waiting for from ever arriving. However, he doubts the Duke's investigation team will be coming either. Deciding to take matters into his own hands, he resolves to find the person himself. Sir Gran calls after him, hoping that if Tiny becomes successful, he will remember his name. Tiny surprises him by asking what his name is, and Sir Gran is taken aback to realize he never knew it. He introduces himself as Gran Rivery, asking Tiny to remember at least Gran. Tiny smiles, saying he hopes Gran will remember his name as well. Stepping outside, Tiny notes that the commander and the Lord have already left, and now it will be up to Sir Gran to decide the fate of Files's estate. He feels a little guilty about leaving behind an unresolved problem, especially since Gran has created a special search team for Commander Cran. Placing the mercenary card in his pocket, he thinks he only needs to borrow a horse from the guild. Just then, Wooling emerges from his body, offering himself as a mount. Tiny declines at first, saying it would be difficult to ride him for a long journey. He recalls some orcs from his past life who rode wolves, noting that only orcs could manage it due to their unnatural sense of balance. But Wooling insists, and Tiny eventually agrees, mounting him. He remarks that Woolang's physical form is still a bit small. In their spiritual form, spirits appear as large as they were in life, but their physical size depends on the skill level of their spirit mage. Placing his hand on Woolang, Tiny learns they need to link their souls and combine their senses. He does so, deciding to give this form of travel a try. As their souls connect, Tiny feels Woolang's body growing larger. He recalls a lesson from his past life, when Estina told him that at higher stages of spirit magic, a spirit could gain some of its mage's abilities. Now, Wooling feels tougher, more powerful, and capable of using abilities drawn from their shared connection. Wooling takes off at full speed, and Tiny struggles to maintain his balance. His senses sharpen dramatically. He can feel every movement Wuling makes, see through his eyes, and even use his keen sense of smell. At this pace, they will reach Valentino in no time, and such speed will also cut down travel time to more distant destinations. One such place is Karun, the kingdom where the first great disaster will strike. In his past life, a chain of catastrophes erupted across the continent, as though warning them of the coming demon army. These events had severely weakened humanity's military strength. He remembers clearly that it all began when the sacred relic in Karun vanished. This time, he intends to stop that from happening. The 7 sacred relics are revealed to be holy artifacts bestowed upon them by the goddess herself. They were meant to serve as the last line of defense, but in his past life, those relics had already been stolen. In this life, he must prevent the coming disasters and grow stronger. This time, he is determined to face the demon army with the full strength of humanity. He remembers that the first calamity will strike in the ocean kingdom of Karen, and he plans to head there as soon as he meets the Duke. Meanwhile, word spreads among the people that the imperial family has dispatched an investigation team after the Lord's murder. Rumors circulate that the Lord was a black mage, and caution fills the air. No one knows what might happen next. Suddenly, black smoke engulfs the area, turning daylight into darkness. A cloaked man appears. The guards move to block his way, but with a casual flick of his hair, he renders them unconscious. Inside the castle, Sir Gran senses an unfamiliar presence. He draws his sword and demands to know who the intruder is. The man calmly states that he wishes to ask a question and orders Sir Gran to tell him everything about the Lord's death. With a snap of his fingers, he places Gran under his control. Gran explains that the Imperial investigation team instructed them to place the Lord's body in a casket inside his bedroom. The man tells him to sleep and wake in an hour. When Sir Gran regains consciousness, he is confused, thinking it was all a dream brought on by exhaustion. But a guard rushes in, reporting that the Lord's corpse has vanished. Gran is stunned. This was their key lead in discovering the culprit behind the black magic. Elsewhere, the black mage emerges in a forest outside File's estate, holding Sir Gran's sword. He believes the weapon was discarded after its owner was killed, meaning the one who slew Wolf must be the black-haired child who vanished right after the incident. He vows to make the boy pay for disrupting his group's plans. Meanwhile, Tiny arrives outside the western gate of Lucentia and notices many people traveling toward Volenia. Walking through the streets, he reflects that things have gone smoothly so far, but if a certain person gets involved, complications are inevitable. He decides he needs better equipment. Checking the small sum given to him by Sir Gran, he feels grateful, but knows it won't go far. Just 2 coins. 2 thugs appear, asking if he has any money and threatening him to hand it over while they're still being nice. To their surprise, Tiny asks them if they have any money. In his past life, there was an unspoken rule in the underworld across the continent. If anyone saw the shadow of a giant in the alleyways, they were to hide without a sound. Tiny had killed many people in that life. Once, a man told him that such killings would taint his soul, that a day would come when guilt would overwhelm him, and urged him to show mercy. Tiny had only stared back before replying that he would be fine. He hadn't killed anyone yet, he added, though he had cleared out plenty of trash. In the present, he swiftly takes down the thugs and seizes their coins. Onlookers are shocked. A child just defeated members of the Lupus family, known to be as strong as knights. Tiny scoffs at their weakness. The thugs stagger back to their feet, threatening to rip his tongue out. He dodges, delivering a blow that sends one crashing into the other. A leaping kick knocks them both down again. When they're finished, he takes their remaining money. One thug warns that their boss won't let this go, but Tiny ignores him, pleased with his newfound wealth and remarking that he will put it to good use. He then heads to a weapon shop, purchasing armor and a new weapon. The owner explains that the armor was crafted from the hide of an iron bull found in the southern mountains, strong enough to deflect most arrows with ease. Tiny inspects both the armor and the weapon, clearly pleased with their craftsmanship. While doing so, he overhears two boys whispering about someone. One of them says they cannot approach her directly, but they can at least watch from afar. Curious, Tiny asks the owner if something special is happening today. The man replies that Lady Valanche herself will be appearing in public patrol. Tiny is startled by this news. He recalls that if Irina had been the first to show him kindness and affection, then Lady Valanche was the one who gave him hope. Although their story in his past life had ended poorly, it was that very hope which allowed him to move forward. He reflects that both women had shaped the course of his life in different ways. In his heart, he always believed that if Lady Valanche acknowledged his way of living, it would prove that he had succeeded in honoring the life Irina wanted for him. He remembers meeting Lady Valanche in his previous life, how she was surprised when he introduced himself as Tiny. She had laughed, saying the name didn't suit his imposing frame. Though she had seemingly forgotten him, he is convinced she should still remember their recent encounter. Resolving to improve himself further, Tiny returns to his training, considering whether he should seek an audience with the swordmaster. Before long, Lady Valanche arrives in the company of Edmund von Lucent, the eldest son of Count Lucent. Edmund proudly tells her about the grandeur of Lucentia, one of the largest cities in the central region. He enthusiastically shares details of its history and trade, but Lady Valanche appears indifferent to the business affairs. Instead, she asks if she may walk through the slums. Startled, Edmund questions her reasoning. She replies simply that the people there are also citizens of their country. Embarrassed, he agrees to escort her, though it is clear her words unsettled him. Valanche notices the reaction and wonders why the slums provoke such discomfort. To her, a true heir should understand the responsibilities of leadership. Her father had always taught her that a kingdom only prospers when the working class thrives. She thinks back to those lessons and reflects on how different her upbringing may have been compared to others. If only she could reshape people's perceptions, she muses. Yet, she knows her freedom will soon end. Once her fiancé is announced at her coming-of-age ceremony, her path will no longer be her own. A part of her even considers dedicating her life to the temple, as they have long sought her service. But the thought pains her, for she knows her father would never wish for her to live a lonely life. As she contemplates, she notices a child being blocked by the guards. Tiny, visibly angry, steps forward. Lady Vivian demands to know who the boy is and why he is there. In response, Tiny raises a ring high for all to see, declaring that it was personally given to him by Lady Valanche. He reminds her that she once told him to seek her out and that he has come to express his long-delayed gratitude. Lady Valanche recognizes the ring, confirming that it is indeed hers. Vivian, however, questions her certainty, as she does not recall ever giving such a token to a child of the slums. She turns to Tiny, asking how he came into possession of it. Shocked, Tiny realizes she truly does not remember their past meeting. Before he can approach her, guards draw their swords, barring him from reaching Lady Valanche. 3 guards press their swords against Tiny's neck, and Vivian demands that he answer Lady Valanche regarding the ring. Tiny quickly realizes what is happening and thinks to himself that he may have been too hasty in coming to meet her. He blurts out that it may be hard to believe, but he is the child she once met long ago. He understands why she doesn't recognize him now that he has grown so much. He explains that he is the only person with black hair in the File estate, and perhaps the only one in the entire duchy. Lady Valanche finally recognizes him and asks how he could have changed so drastically when he used to be such a frail and grubby child. She recalls that his body was much smaller back then. He was pitiful, yet endearingly cute. Tiny remembers that she always had a soft spot for small and adorable things. Wanting to prove himself, he reveals his mana, and a small, charming spirit from Woline appears before them. She is immediately taken by it, while Vivian insists that she let him go, since he is a stranger. Valanche, however, smiles and remarks that only pure-hearted children are able to form contracts with spirits. Tiny simply smirks at her words, though Vivian remains wary. She points out that he not only carries a weapon, but also commands a spirit. She demands to know his name. Tiny answers that he named the spirit Wuleng, which means moonlight wolf in the Eastern tongue. Vivian is astonished that he even knows the Eastern language, while Lady Valentia praises the name and admits she never imagined he could change so much in just 2 months. She remembers how he once looked no older than 10, his name carrying the sense of something small. Tiny tells her that his true name is Tiny, and that he will be turning 13 this year. He explains that unlocking his mana has greatly accelerated his growth. Suddenly, Vivian steps forward, confronting him and questioning whether he is truly human, or if the blood of another race flows in his veins. Lady Valentia tries to stop her, but Vivian apologizes, insisting that her duty is to protect her lady's safety. At that moment, Edmund interrupts, declaring that Tiny is indeed suspicious and should be isolated and interrogated. Tiny calmly replies that he does not expect the others to trust him and directly calls upon Lady Valentia. She reminds him that she promised to help when he gave her the ring. This angers Edmund, who demands to know how Tiny dares ignore his authority. But Lady Valentia silences him, asking Tiny what kind of help he seeks. Tiny states that he wishes to meet Esgard von Valenta. At once, the guards, including Vivian, surge forward, outraged that he would even dare to speak such a thing. Tiny challenges them, asking if they truly believe he could harm the Duke. It is then revealed that the Duke is a legendary swordmaster, counted among the 7 strongest knights of the entire continent, a man who wields both destructive power and aura. Tiny acknowledges this, addressing him as Swordmaster. Lady Valentia smiles, saying her father would be embarrassed to hear anyone call him that. Tiny realizes that the Duke has not yet been formally granted the title, though Valentia seems to like it, insisting that it suits him. Vivian beams with pride, boasting that their Duke's reputation is known across the world. Tiny notices how delighted they are by his words and continues, saying he must report to the Duke about the recent incident in the File estate, an incident in which he himself was directly involved. Later, within the castle, Vivian and Lady Valentia speak privately. Valentia asks whether everything Tiny said truly happened. Vivian, embarrassed, admits that it is true. Valentia then presses her, asking if there is anything else she is hiding. Reluctantly, Vivian reveals that Tiny claimed the Lord of the Empire was a dark mage, hinting that someone else is manipulating events from the shadows. Valentia reflects that Tiny's testimony could prove invaluable, as he was personally involved. She also notes that his timing is fortunate, since he seeks an audience with her father. Finally, Vivian asks her how long she intends to keep the spirit at her side, and whether its presence causes her any pain. Valenia picks it up and teases, asking how something so small and adorable could possibly harm her. Wang looks at her fondly, agreeing that it is indeed cute, but quickly shakes her head, insisting that she won't be fooled by appearances and will keep a close eye on it. Valenia then asks about Tiny. Vivian explains that Master Edmund mentioned having business with him and took him away. Wuleng is startled by this news and bolts off without warning, leaving Valenia and Vivian frightened by his sudden reaction. Meanwhile, Edmund leads Tiny to a secluded area and demands that he repeat his name, telling him to remember his place. Tiny interrupts him, asking instead what information he has on the Dark Mage. Edmund smirks, questioning how he could possibly know about a Dark Mage, and admits he fabricated the story after Tiny arrogantly refused to obey. Tiny accuses him of lying, but Edmund seizes his head, scolding him for speaking back. In anger, Edmund tries to strike him, insisting he should learn his place. But Tiny reacts quickly, grabbing Edmund's hand in midair. Shocked, Edmund struggles to break free but cannot. Outraged, he warns Tiny that such disrespect toward a noble would force him to report to the lady herself. Tiny finally releases his hand but speaks harshly, mocking the idea of nobility as if it were some strange shield. He tells Edmund to do as he pleases. Edmund only smiles, saying he wants to see what Tiny is truly capable of, hinting that he has powerful backing behind him. After a moment's hesitation, Edmund smirks and tells Tiny to follow. Elsewhere, Vivian searches for Tiny under Lady Valanche's orders. Though she initially thought her lady was being overly protective, she recalls that spirits are usually summoned back when they stray too far from their mage. She never imagined Edmund would dare take that boy beyond the city walls. Guards confirm that he left with Tiny, and she immediately rushes toward the city gates, desperate to reach them in time. Meanwhile, Edmund and Tiny arrive at an isolated place. Edmund wears a sinister grin, while Tiny appears completely unfazed, showing no hint of fear. A man emerges, asking what business Edmund has brought their precious young master into. He mentions they have not yet prepared the usual bribe and wonders if Edmund came for goods. Tiny sizes them up immediately, realizing these must be members of the Lupus family, just as he expected. Edmund sneers, ordering them to educate the arrogant peasant. Surprised that he would have them discipline a mere child, the man hesitates. Edmund strikes his face in frustration, commanding him not to return the boy but to teach him a lesson. Angrily, the man agrees and orders his subordinates, Eric and Tillman, to deal with him. The two men step forward but freeze in shock upon recognizing Tiny, the same boy who defeated them when he first entered the city. Tiny greets them casually, remarking that they meet again. Fear spreads across their faces, and instead of attacking, they kneel before him, pleading with their boss to handle the boy himself. Enraged, their leader grabs his weapon, declaring it will be the boy's end. Edmund watches with satisfaction, convinced Tiny's fate is sealed. But the moment the boss strikes, Tiny swiftly draws his weapon and slashes at his leg, sending him flying back and knocking him unconscious in a single blow. Gasps echo all around as everyone stares in disbelief. Tiny turns his gaze to Edmund, coldly asking if this is the best he can muster. Panicked, Edmund runs toward Lupus, demanding his protection. Tiny suddenly appears behind him, releasing a surge of mana and challenging him to defend himself. Overcome with fear, Lupus collapses into unconsciousness, while Edmund, trembling in terror, falls to the ground without even being struck. Tiny feels let down, disappointed that the so-called boss offered so little resistance. Turning to the others, he asks sharply what they are even doing there. After a short while, Vivian arrives, intending to rescue him, but she is stunned by the scene before her. Her shock deepens when she notices Edmund's pitiful condition. Meanwhile, Tiny casually sits atop a cupboard, calmly flipping through a book. He eventually descends the stairs and questions her presence. She explains that she came under her lady's orders, concerned for his safety. Tiny then hands her a ledger filled with detailed records of bribes and evidence of human trafficking. Gesturing toward Edmund, he remarks that with this ledger in her hands, Edmund has no chance of talking his way out of it. Stunned, Vivian demands to know what kind of life he has been living until now. The next day, Edmund is formally exiled from the Count's household, while Tiny sets out on a journey alongside Lady Valentia and Vivian. Valentia observes that Edmund must have been running a trafficking ring with this gang for quite some time, and as a result, the Count's reputation has been badly tarnished. She predicts that it will take him a long time to even attempt clearing his name. During the journey, Vivian lowers her head and apologizes, then turns to Tiny and asks if he believes his own actions were wrong. Valentia glances toward him as he replies that he does not. Smiling, she recalls her father's words that good deeds must always be recognized, and punishments should be carried out regardless of one's status. Vivian, catching Valentia's look, questions her, only for Valentia to respond that perhaps she should have broken one of Edmund's arms or legs after he fainted. Yet, he escaped without any real punishment. Tiny smiles at the exchange, thinking to himself that these two have always been this way. They are both widely known and deeply respected. One, the youngest daughter of the swordmaster, and the other, a prodigious female warrior. At times, they seem like sisters, at other times like mother and daughter. Even after K.H. Lo's circumstances shifted, they stayed close. Tiny finds it amusing that Vivian, though the younger of the two, often acts like the elder sister or even like a mother. Lost in thought, Tiny is suddenly called upon by Valencia, who asks what is on his mind. He replies that Edmund, more than anyone, took great pride in his noble status. For that very reason, he believes Edmund's crimes cannot be forgiven, and at the very least, punishment is necessary. Vivian, hearing his words, jumps up and urges Valencia to listen. She remarks that the way Tiny speaks doesn't sound like a child at all. But Valencia ignores her, choosing instead to play with Wallen, affectionately giving him the nickname Wall, because his real name is too difficult to say. Tiny grows serious and asks whether she intends to blame him for all of this or suspect him. Valencia only smiles, explaining that she has already heard stories about the black-haired child from File's estate, the one who destroyed an underworld organization and freed all its victims. Now, with Edmund exposed, it proves he truly is remarkable. Relieved, Tiny smiles inwardly, grateful for her trust. She then scolds him, however, demanding that next time he inform her before running off. 3 days later, while traveling through a forest, a guard informs Valencia that an elf has requested to join them. Both she and Vivian are startled, since it is rare for elves to appear in such a way. Stepping out of the carriage, Valencia watches as the elf removes her cloak and respectfully asks for permission to approach. Introducing herself as Irina, a servant of the World Tree, she requests to accompany them for a time. Valencia and Vivian take a liking to her, but Tiny instantly recognizes something others cannot. This elf is a 5-circle dark mage. Elves are renowned for their beauty, said to be descendants of fairies. Their homeland, Elfanum, lies in the western lands, while the Isran Empire sits in the central east. Because of the distance, elves are a rare sight within the empire. Yet, when they do appear, they are held in the highest regard. Born with the natural gift to become spirit mages, elves have long been regarded as an innocent, kind-hearted, and peace-loving tribe. Yet now, there stands an elf who has reached the formidable rank of a 5-circle dark mage. Valencia asks if she has been passing through Valentino's territory on her way to the Werebeast Kingdom in the north. Irina then wonders aloud if she feels uneasy about traveling to the Beast Kingdom, since she herself comes from the Isran Empire, which has long been at odds with the Werebeasts. Valencia calmly replies that she has no concerns and that she prefers to travel quietly. Irina explains that her journey is all part of her training. She wishes to see the world and hear many stories. Valencia responds that she has heard of Irina's training before and asks if they might speak about the Elven Knight training that produces elite warriors. Irina remarks that Valencia seems well informed, then asks if she is the owner of the spirit she is currently holding. Valencia points toward Tiny and clarifies that the spirit belongs to him. Fixing her eyes on him, she comments that there are not many human spirit mages. Tiny looks back and realizes she must already know what happened. He hadn't expected the person their lord spoke of to be someone of her level. Deep down, he knows he cannot hope to fight her now. Choosing to act friendly, Tiny says he has never met an elf before. He tries to pull Viven into the conversation, but she resists, and Tiny realizes they are refusing to play along. He notes that Irina seems unaware of Wulang's true abilities knowledge only those who have formed a contract with the spirit would possess. He wonders how she can conceal such an overwhelming amount of magic. Irina mentions she hasn't used magic in some time, then asks Tiny if he would like to see some. Releasing her mana, she conjures a flame in her palm. The sight makes Tiny recall Argon from his past life. He regrets not paying closer attention to Argon's warnings back then, as they had saved many from far greater losses. Assessing his surroundings, Tiny counts 12 third-stage expert rank knights and 1 4th-stage blade rank knight among them. He recalls that the circles of a mage are the magical equivalent of a warrior's stages. To defeat an opponent 1 stage above, it requires 5 people 1 stage below. Simply put, For a second-stage mana user to overcome a 5-circle mage, at least 100 would be needed. If they attack her recklessly, they will be utterly destroyed. The only option is to catch her off guard. Clenching his fist, Tiny resolves that they must wait for the right opportunity. Fortunately, they still possess a hidden advantage. Wuling. Suddenly, Wuling leaps from Valencia's side toward Viven. She asks if she might hold him for a moment. Erin admires the spirit's cuteness, admitting she wishes to hold him as well. Tiny picks Wuling up and offers him forward, and she reaches out, unable to refuse. But just as she is about to touch him, Wuling transforms into his massive form and launches an attack. Irina reacts, forming magic circles to restrain him, but she is caught off guard. In that instant, Viven appears from the flank and drives her sword into her. To everyone's shock, dark energy bursts forth from Irina's body, revealing her true nature as a dark mage. Furious, she turns to Valencia and demands to know when she realized the truth. Valencia, however, remains calm, believing she made the right choice in placing her trust in Tiny. Moments earlier, Tiny had secretly spoken to her through Wuling, revealing Irina's identity as a high-ranking dark mage and asking for Viven's aid. Now, as events unfold, Tiny directs Viven carefully, while Valencia acknowledges that this revelation could bring serious consequences for the Empire. She asks him to understand her difficult position. Tiny revealed to her that she was the mastermind behind the incident at File's estate. He warned that if they didn't ambush her immediately, they would all be in grave danger. She was stunned when she saw Tiny's determination, ready to put his life on the line. She quickly gave Wuling to Viven, asking him to deliver a message. Leaning close, she whispered something in his ear, explaining the situation in detail. At that moment, Viven and Tiny launched their attack together. However, they found themselves unable to strike at her heart. She forcefully pushed them away, and to their shock, they realized she had conjured a powerful shield around herself. Viven immediately ordered the knights to engage her. In response, she rallied them, commanding them to prepare for battle and defend their ladyship at all costs. Her first assault was directed at Tiny, who charged forward to counter her strike. Viven joined in, trying to land a blow, but despite their combined efforts, she proved overwhelmingly powerful. With a swift movement, she unleashed a devastating strike that forced them back. Viven narrowly dodged, leaving her momentarily surprised at how he had managed to evade her attack. Tiny, grinning, leapt at her with another strike, taunting that her foul stench was enough to make his nose burn. Enraged by his mockery, she demanded to know if insults were all he was capable of before she released a wave of suffocating dark aura. Dark energy swirled around her as she prepared another deadly strike aimed directly at Tiny. He evaded, but she quickly condensed a massive sphere of pure darkness, releasing an overwhelming surge of power. Everyone watched in disbelief as the energy formed. Tiny summoned his mana, hardening his body into an iron shield to withstand the attack. When her strike collided, the impact hurled him across the battlefield. Bruised but alive, he thought to himself that this was the first time he had used this skill since turning back time. They soon noticed that her shield had weakened, prompting Viven to order the knights to strike. She retaliated with another surge of energy, warning them to stay out of her way. Meanwhile, Tiny mounted Wang, circling around to attack from behind. But she quickly sensed his presence. Just as she prepared to retaliate, Viven and the knights closed in from the opposite side. Furious, she hissed that she had only intended to kill the boy. But since they all interfered, she would eliminate every one of them. Viven charged forward, vowing they would never allow her to succeed. Vivian struck from above, attempting to break her shield, while Tiny pressed his assault from the other side. The clash caused a violent explosion, leaving her visibly wounded and her shield badly fractured. Recognizing the opening, the knights rushed her all at once. Viven and Tiny emerged from another angle, though Tiny noted her shield was not fully broken yet. Rising to her feet, she muttered that she would deal with the consequences later. then slammed her fists into the ground with immense force, driving them all back. From a distance, Valantia watched as the spreading darkness threatened to consume her. Vivian cried out, urging her to retreat, but she was too late. Valantia leapt forward, narrowly dodging the attack, and managed to shield herself. She then bounded forward again, calling for Valentia to hold on. To everyone's shock, Tiny charged straight through the wall of dark energy. His divine steel armor absorbed the flames, proving its resilience. He realized this skill was even more potent now, strengthened by his improved growth technique. Coordinating with Viven, Tiny directed their efforts toward wearing down her shield. He launched an overhead strike while Tiny smashed directly through the barrier. The resulting explosion of energy rocked the battlefield. From the sidelines, Valentia screamed his name, begging him to be careful. Both Viven and Tiny were thrown to the ground, their bodies battered from the impact. Walling rushed in at the last moment, pulling Tiny away before he suffered further damage. Even so, Tiny was gravely injured, blood trickling from his mouth as he coughed violently. Arena stands without her shield, clutching her waist, blood flowing heavily from her wound. Riding atop Woleng, he declares that they've finally managed to land a strike on her and charges forward, determined to attack again. From the side, Vivian leaps in as well. Arena gathers her strength and lashes out, mocking them as nothing more than filthy humans. Vivian staggers back in disbelief, wondering how she still possesses such overwhelming power. Her shock deepens when she sees Tiny, undeterred and ready to strike again. With Woleng beneath him, Tiny leaps through the oppressive waves of her dark energy, pushing forward with unwavering resolve. His strike lands true, and Vivian immediately calls for the knights to finish Arena off. But before they can, a sudden explosion erupts. Tiny notices Arena attempting to flee, and the knights shout to each other to give chase. With a sinister smile, she declares it is time for the ultimate sacrifice. Descending toward the ground, she invokes a forbidden power, an ability of demon followers to sacrifice their bodies, amplifying their magic to unleash devastating destruction. Her final act is to burn everything around her into ash. She releases the catastrophic spell, and the knights scramble to shield themselves against the deadly wave. Tiny, mounted on Wang, soars into the air. His heart sinks. He knows the knights are already at their limits. Only a power capable of negating her magic can end this battle. He calls out to Valentia, telling her he has bought her the time she needs, and now it is her turn. Vivian too urges her not to hesitate. Light begins to spread across the battlefield as Valentia gathers her strength. It is revealed that holy power is not something gained easily. It is bestowed through penance after receiving a divine blessing. First, one must endure the trials of baptism, then master the use of holy energy, only then awakening the ability to smite evil. Yet among humanity, a rare few are born already carrying this gift, saints and warriors sent by the gods in times of peril. These exceptional individuals, still considered clerics in training, are precious beyond compare. Lady Valentia is one such rarity. Her power surges forth, radiant light pushing back against Arena's darkness. The knights stand in awe, astonished by the hidden might of the woman they had thought they knew. Tiny realizes that she had even concealed her power from them. Perhaps even the swordmaster feared she would renounce her noble ties, abandoning marriage to fully devote herself to the priesthood. Yet in this moment, Tiny sees that she is the strongest cleric he has ever encountered. He had doubted her strength before, but now her light alone proves more than enough to overcome the dark mage. Arena struggles desperately against the overwhelming brilliance, but soon the holy flames consume her. With a thunderous explosion, she crashes to the ground, shrieking in disbelief. "Impossible! How could I lose to pathetic humans?" she screams. Tiny rushes forward and strikes her again, urging Valentia to finish the job since the others are already completely drained. Valentia approaches, however, and pleads with him not to kill her. They still need to interrogate Arena, she explains, for even she could not sense the woman's dark energy. If she could heal her, she might uncover why. Tiny shakes his head. If Valencia only wants to confirm her condition, he says, then he can already tell her it cannot be helped, for Irina is already dead. To him, it is a fitting end for a high-ranking dark mage. The knights gather, cheering in triumph, yet astonished to learn Valencia is a cleric. But while they celebrate, Valencia's heart feels heavy. Her secret has been exposed, and in the end, she feels as though she has lost more than she has gained. Turning to Tiny, she asks quietly if he had already known. After all, he was the only one who didn't seem surprised when she revealed her holy magic. Tiny admits that he already knew she was a cleric. Surprised, she asks how he could possibly know, since this was meant to be a secret only his family should be aware of. Tiny replies that he cannot explain it just yet, but gives his word that one day he will tell her everything. She accepts his promise with a smile, which leaves him startled at how easily she lets it go. He then explains that the dark mage's true target had been him all along, since he had already been entangled in several other incidents before crossing paths with her. She asks if he became involved in those incidents in the same way he had with Edmund, and he feels guilty, realizing that he had dragged her into danger. Yet she firmly declares that it is the duty of nobles to fight and kill demon followers, and if she had died, then it would have been because of her own weakness. Tiny reflects that she hasn't changed one bit. She tousles his hair and teasingly asks if he is worried about how she might react. Calling him cute, she laughs when Tiny scowls at the word, clearly not fond of it. Vivian joins in her laughter, amused by his reaction. Tiny can't help but think they have no idea how old he truly is. Vivian, still grinning, insists that he is just a child. She playfully pinches his cheeks, remarking that kids his age usually hate being called cute. Continuing to tease him, she says she never expected to see this side of him. Tiny tries to pull away, insisting that he is nothing like the other children she is comparing him to. Meanwhile, Valino's attention shifts toward Irina's body, and she states that this needs to be reported to her father immediately. She also decides that once they reach the nearest city, she will send him a detailed account of everything that happened. Several days later, when they arrive at Tybin's front gate, they are met by a squad of blue-winged knights, personally dispatched by the Duke. Tiny realizes this means the swordmaster truly values his daughter's safety. Valencia blushes slightly, insisting there was no need for such measures. Onlookers whisper in awe, marveling at the sight of the legendary knights they had only ever heard about in stories. Known throughout the Empire, the Blue Wings are regarded as the most disciplined and powerful force, with every knight ranked above expert level. Their captain removes his helmet and respectfully greets them as the vice-captain of the Blue Wing Knights, introducing the 103 men under his command, who immediately salute in unison. Valencia thanks both him and his men, telling them they may stand at ease. Sir Garin, the vice-captain, expresses relief at seeing her unharmed and admits that the Duke had been extremely worried. Valencia insists that she had already assured her father of her safety and that it was unnecessary for him to send such a force. Sir Garin replies that she was suddenly ambushed by a high-ranking dark mage, and under different circumstances, the Duke himself would have come in person. When Valencia asks what crisis could possibly keep him away, Garin explains that about 6 weeks earlier, Tempest, the family's treasured heirloom, vanished without a trace. The group is stunned, and Tiny, equally shocked, asks if this missing heirloom is some kind of artifact. Valencia admits she cannot say for certain, as the truth of Tempest is a secret revealed only to the head of the family. Still, she suspects it must be an extraordinarily powerful artifact. What astonishes her even more is when Tiny calmly states that he already knows what it is and why it disappeared. Everyone is taken aback, and Valentina demands to know how he has such knowledge. Tiny, however, refuses to elaborate until he can speak directly to the Duke, promising to explain everything once they meet. As they set off on their journey, Sir Garin grows increasingly curious. He asks the other knights about Tiny, saying the name sounds familiar. One knight explains that Tiny is an extraordinary child who played a decisive role in defeating the Dark Mage. Furthermore, rumors suggest he is already on the verge of reaching expert rank. Sir Garin is left speechless at this revelation, unable to believe that someone so young could already stand at such a level of strength. He doubts that anyone among the 7 knights could possibly reach the rank of expert at such a young age. The thought unsettles him. Was he truly a monster? Even the most gifted prodigy should not be capable of such a feat. That only reinforced his conviction. He had to recruit him. A nearby knight, noticing his distraction, asks if something is wrong. Sir Garin shakes his head, recalling that he was the one who had originally sent the letter reporting the events at Files's estate. Elsewhere, Valentia gazes in delight at the endless green fields and the clusters of lilacs scattered throughout the land. Tiny glances at her and asks if she likes lilacs. She answers warmly that she loves them. Her late mother had adored them as well, and even her father had shared that fondness. They had once called her Lilac as a baby. Tiny smiles, remarking that the name suits her perfectly. Vivian then adds that the love between the Duke and his late wife was well known, and that the Duchess was the only woman the Duke ever truly loved. At that, Tiny recalls a moment when the Duke privately confided in him. The Duke had revealed that he personally disliked lilacs, and had asked him never to forget it. Tiny now smiles faintly, realizing why such a sentiment would have remained a closely guarded secret. His thoughts turn elsewhere. The Swordmaster likely doesn't know who he truly is. Still, he must track him down quickly. Only then could he help refine his strength. Once he meets him and begins proper training, the next step would be to uncover the path to becoming an Aura Master. Without achieving that stage, he knew he would be powerless against the higher-ranking officers of the demon army. This time, he swore he would annihilate them all. Days later, the group finally arrives at Valentino City, the seat of Duke Volinia's power and one of the grandest cities in the Asan Empire. The knights rejoice, relieved to be back in their homeland. Valent asks if he has ever been to this city before, and he admits that this is his first visit, at least in this lifetime. His answer surprises her. Suddenly, the Duke himself appears, rushing toward Valentia with tears brimming in his eyes. He reaches out for her, but she sidesteps gracefully, causing him to stumble and fall. Rising quickly, he demands to know why she acted that way. Valentia calmly reminds him that others are watching, and that his reputation as a duke is at stake. He insists there is nothing wrong with showing concern for his daughter, but she urges him to instead apologize to the knights for the hardships they endured on her behalf. The Duke collects himself, thanking the knights sincerely. He declares that it was by their efforts that his daughter returned home safely, and he expresses his gratitude not as a noble, but as a father. To honor them, he announces a feast and invites everyone to partake in the celebration. The knights bow respectfully, acknowledging his words. Turning back to his daughter, the Duke asks about the child. Tiny watches silently, knowing the Duke would not recognize him. Valentia explains that she had already mentioned him in her report and that he possesses valuable information about the Dark Mage. Stepping forward, Tiny states firmly that he wishes to discuss the whereabouts of the Tempest. The revelation shocks everyone present, including Valentia herself. The Duke narrows his gaze on Tiny, remarking on his audacity. Suddenly, an immense pressure radiates from him, and Tiny feels as though he is being forced into the ground. He recognizes it as soul pressure and notes that, while formidable, the Duke still has far to go. He has only just crossed into the realm of an aura user. It is then revealed that Estina, one of the 7 knights, had already achieved the rank of aura expert, while Jarek was close to doing the same. Tiny steadies himself, confident that he can withstand this trial by calling upon the soul energy he had amassed in his previous life. He asks the Duke if he is certain that he wants him to reveal everything right there. Valentia steps forward, gently requesting that the Duke forgive Tiny. She explains that Tiny is still young, with much to learn, and insists that he did not intend any harm with his words. The Duke, however, replies firmly. He says Tiny could not have spoken so boldly if he had not known exactly what he was doing. Believing that this matter requires a private discussion, he decides to speak with him alone. After a short while, the Duke leads Tiny to his office and asks if he knows anything about the artifact known as Tempest. Tiny responds with confidence, saying that if his assumptions are correct, he should indeed be able to find it. The Duke presses further, asking what those assumptions are. Tiny explains that Tempest is one of the few artifacts he is familiar with. He recalls that the word Tempest means time or opportunity and asks whether the artifact has the power to turn back time. The Duke encourages him to elaborate, and Tiny begins recounting everything that led to this moment. He reveals that it all started with the great disaster fated to occur 20 years from now. With grave honesty, he shares the truth of his past life. The Duke listens intently, struck by how convincing Tiny's story sounds, almost too detailed to be fabricated. He is especially astonished that Tiny knows the names of the World Tree's guardian, the strongest hammer of the dwarves, and the greatest warrior among the orcs. Tiny solemnly explains that they were his companions' warriors who had fought by his side for an entire year. At this, the Duke rises to his feet. He reveals that the word Tempest does indeed signify time or opportunity. By sacrificing the life of a powerful individual, the artifact can send someone back into the past. For generations, his family was warned of the dangers of wielding it recklessly, and he himself had been told of its powers when he inherited it as a family heirloom. Still, he never believed the legends to be true. Turning toward the window, the Duke admits that he is willing to consider Tiny's story in light of what he has shared. Yet doubts linger in his mind. He questions why someone like Tiny was chosen. If the artifact had been used on him instead, he argues, he could have used his own knowledge of the future and his noble status to properly prepare humanity's armies against the Demon Lord. Fixing his gaze on Tiny, he demands to know why he, of all people, was the one sent back. Tiny replies quietly that only he would have understood the reason. He recalls how the Duke had once spoken about nurturing his talent's words that had sounded like nonsense at the time. He even admits that, back then, he truly thought the Duke had begun to lose his mind. The Duke turns back toward him and reveals the truth. It was never certain how far back in time the artifact would send someone. Tiny is shocked, realizing the Duke used such a dangerous artifact without fully understanding its effects. Calmly, the Duke explains that he had never once used it before, so he had no way of knowing what it would do. The only thing he is certain of is this: the artifact sends a person back to the single moment in their life that shook them more deeply than anything else.